Hello, this is Alejandro Bratti from Believe in Yourself, Believe in Your Business, and welcome to the Spanglish World Networks on Single TV channel 250. Please remember to download both the Single TV app on the respective app stores on iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure to rate and leave a comment. The app is free and available in Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire, Roku, and all smart TVs. Today, I am really glad to have Mark with us. Thank you, Mark, for joining us today in the program.
No problem. Glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
So, Mark is a vice president and CFO at Beringer here in Mexico, and I am really happy because this is part of what we do in this program. This program is about how our belief system help us to become what we want to become or stop us to become what we want to become. Our belief system does that in either way. We know it or not, it's okay. At the end, it's working for us. So thank you. At the end, Mark, this is exactly what we do always. Is we are showing people ways to be successful. There is other ways, I know, but always start with your mindset and the belief system that we have, and that help us to realize, like, okay, this is what I am doing, and or maybe thinking, oh, I don't know why nothing is working, and I am so stressed that nothing is working, and I have been working for 20 years trying to do something and nothing happens. Okay, there is a problem in your belief system that maybe you can start to work with. So I would like to start with what you are doing now, so that can help us to have like an overview of where are you, and then we are going to go back in your life to start to understand how you make it happen.
Sure. Well, currently I'm, like you said, a vice president of finance and administration for a large multinational pharmaceutical company. I'm located in Mexico City, and I manage a team that we oversee together the finance and administration operations for our businesses and operations, production operations in Mexico. We have tight linkages with other subsidiaries, of course, our headquarters in Germany and many other subsidiaries all across the world. I have about 105 people in my team, and spanning things from IT, purchasing, accounting, finance, controlling, those types of things. And I've been here for 2.5 years in this role. I maybe in the spirit of where we need to go. I had no idea that one day I would be in Mexico in this position. It was never on my plan. Certainly not in Mexico, but that's kind of the way things go sometimes. So that's a little bit about my role right now. I spend a lot of my time working with my team. Actually, I spend by far the majority of my team working, or the majority of my time working with my team, and enabling their success, giving them support, advice, trying to empower them to be their best. I maybe should be spending more time with my peers and my manager, but most of the time I have my head down with my own team, and that's where I'm adding the most value, I think, right now. Alejandro, I think I lost you. Maybe.
So Mark, uh, as you were saying, you spend most of the time dealing with the finance and purchases and stuff like that at the firm. Uh, what is some of the advice that you render to your team in regards to dealing with um, some of the day-to-day day-to-day operations of the finance area?
Yeah. Maybe the advice that I'm most famous for giving in my team, I give it to all of my teams because it applies to every area. Um, in our function, in our work, most of our job comes down to making sure that we have reliable and sustainable processes. And those reliable and sustainable processes are just very, very critical to the success of our business. Um, and so the advice that I give to all of my teams is to make their job boring. And this doesn't, of course, by its nature, does not sound very exciting. but but I think this is the only, if we make our core jobs very boring, which in my mind I translate to, uh, not a lot of urgent topics. They're sustainable. They're predictable. We If you have that as a foundation, like a very reliable foundation, you can start to do other things that are much more exciting and potentially add more value. I don't think it's always the case that you have to do something exciting to add value, but I think this is a real kind of a common piece of advice that I give to all of my teams, no matter where they are on the journey. Some of my teams have accomplished; they're on different levels of achieving this objective. But when I, as a manager, receive lots of escalations or lots of exception requests or lots of noise in a certain area, it usually means that there's something not working quite right. So it doesn't mean that I don't want to hear about things that aren't going well. I mean, that's the other side that you have to balance, is I want to hear what's truly going on, but that's a bit of a barometer for me to judge how the teams are doing.
Mm.
Is if they're making their core job and the reason that they exist very routine and ordinary and predictable, it creates a wonderful foundation for us to do more things in the future.
Awesome. So let's go back in your life, Mark, before everything started to happen. Maybe I don't know which time you want to share with us, but a moment that you felt that okay, it was a difficult time, but help you to start to understand even the way you are checking life and understanding life right now and understanding how to even work with teams, because I love that what that you are saying. It's like it's not about how I am connecting with my peers or anybody. I mean, you can be saying like, okay, the people that work for me, but you are telling my team it's part of me, you know. I like that, but where do you think that started?
Um, so I think, boy, I don't know. I think I would have to go way back. I think this is very deep in my person. Um, Maybe I'll start. I mean, just with my career. I mean, I'm an analyst by training,
Mm,
which means that I'm trained to look at problems, financial problems, usually business problems, let's say, and highlight assumptions or key key reasons that certain things the key things would happen. Um, and that's really where I started. So I think this is uh, uh, when I was first in my first role when I graduated um, with my undergraduate degree in finance. I went to work as an analyst, and this was basically me locked in a room, very early days of the internet. The internet existed, but it was very, very premature. Email was a novelty. We still, we're getting used to that technology. But spreadsheets and computing power was becoming very important to all businesses. And I learned to manage spreadsheets, right? And I learned to input data into spreadsheets, to analyze it, to report on it, to think about it, to highlight trends, etc. And I kind of fell in love with that. But I learned very quickly that I didn't want to be locked in an office all day either, typing stuff into spreadsheets. But instead, I wanted to make sure that, this was really the foundation of my career.
Yeah.
It also prompted me to go to business school, which is where I got my MBA after working for a short time. And that really transformed me. I mean, it opened me up, opened my eyes to many things that were possible as an analyst, as a finance professional, as someone who likes to deal with problems. This was really, kind of the technical part of my training. I wouldn't say until only through the last, I don't know, 6-7 years have I really focused on team or people side of my job. It's not to say that I didn't work in teams and it didn't, but I was not focused on building teams or enabling teams or empowering teams or anything like that. This just kind of happened to me out of necessity, honestly, because I was put in positions that required me to, in order to be successful, I had to get work done through others. And so really, I think the key for me is somewhere in those last years, I really separated, or I made the transition from analyst or whatever to being more of a leader and focusing on getting work done through other people. So that separation of, you come to a point in your career where you can only achieve so much on your own, and you have to rely on other people, and that's when you start to believe that teamwork is critical, because it is in that environment. So in my job today, going all the way back from the time when I was creating spreadsheets in a small dark office with bankers' boxes full of data, I'm now, spending very little to zero time analyzing in that same way. But I'm empowering people that need to do that type of work in various different capacities, whether that's in support functions or analytical functions or enabling functions, whatever it might be. So I don't know if there's a key trigger point for me, but that transition has been pretty critical over the years. Yeah. It definitely was not something I could do in a classroom. It's not something you can watch a webinar or go to a class at Harvard or Stanford or something and learn how to do it. I mean, yes, you can talk about it, but not until you really feel like you have to do it is when it really becomes substantial or meaningful, really critical to your success, and then it takes on a whole new dimension.
And I understand you very well because I am a system engineer, so I have been always also very analytical at the beginning, and understanding how to move to, okay, it's a team building and it's a team effort, and creating projects and transforming things with a team makes all the difference. If you are alone, it's like, okay, you are doing everything by yourself, and that's fine, and you can excel and you can do a lot of things, but not really have all the power and the influence that you can have when you have a big team. So for me, it's very interesting to check how you started to. Okay, I had the opportunity. How was at the beginning when you had that opportunity?
Yeah,
What areas you needed to work in yourself? Like, oh, now I have to do this, and what is happening here?
yeah. No, I think one thing that I think is worth noting based on your comment is I think, I think it's tempting to look at me or someone in my position and think that I have lots of power or influence. I think this is true to some extent, but I think I'm sure. It's not that I think or in my belief system, I'm 100% sure that if you are trying to achieve something for the sake of having power or control or dominion or
Yeah.
something over other people, that you will fail. It's just a matter of time. I'm not saying that people don't achieve great status if they have that belief system, but I think it's very, very difficult to lead teams with that mindset. Yeah. Um, and it took me a long time to figure that out. So you ask me a little bit about, what's the journey towards leadership. I think you have to fail sometimes. I think you have to see the results of the wrong behaviors
Mm.
to really learn what's going on. I think for me, since I'm an analyst, I'm introverted by nature. I find I get a lot of energy by being alone and reflective. And so looking out to others is not natural to me at all.
Mm.
Yeah. So, and that was, I mean, as an analyst, as a individual contributor on a team, that works really well. Yeah. I mean, I focus, I can get very into a problem and solving it. Um, that works great. When you're leading a team, however, you have to be concerned with many other things, starting with the perceptions that your team have of you. How do they see you? What type of leader are you? And sometimes those perceptions can be very, very different from what you feel as a leader, and also the way what you're trying to put together, or trying to do as a leader, which can be very frustrating, And when you're trying to um, to lead a team with a certain objective or motivation, and it's not going right, analytically, you can dissect it very different ways, and you can say it should be doing this because I put this in the system and it's not coming out the other side like I wanted, or my team is not responding in the right way. And that's very different mindset,
Mm.
So in that way, whatever they're perceiving is reality, and you have to deal with that new reality and move on. Yeah. So, um,
But you are saying something really powerful here, because everybody has a different perception. That doesn't mean that they have the truth, even yourself or other people. And when you are managing teams, you are dealing with all those perceptions. How do you deal with that, with all those perceptions? I am asking from your point of view. I have done that a lot too, but I want to check from your perspective, because that, I believe, start to connect with the idea of this program of the art of balance. Is okay, what is the art of balance? I started to understand that everybody has a different perception, and
yeah.
how I can deal with them can change everything.
Yeah. So I think, so the question is, how do I deal with different perceptions? I think one thing that you need to be careful of, we all need to be careful of, I believe, is making too many assumptions.
Mm.
So, and I learned very quickly, and I think I've proved this out many times in my own experience, that often my assumptions, especially about what other people are thinking, are wrong.
Mm.
So I think one thing I've learned over time is to be courageous or bold with some of the questions I ask regarding how people are feeling, how they see things. And that takes courage because um, when you have a high level of trust, I don't think this comes automatically. I think it takes some time to get there with people. And they are willing to share with you what's really going on for them, what they're really feeling. This can open you up to some feedback that you may not like to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah. So really, asking people what they think, what they believe, what they're seeing, how they perceive things. Um, and in Latin cultures, at least, this can be very, very tough to achieve. Um, uh, Speaking about the differences in cultures, I mean, in Germany, United States, if you ask someone what they think, at least at the professional level, nearly all of the time you'll get a very pointed answer. Um, but in Latin cultures, at least my experience over the last nearly 3 years is that this takes a long time to build,
Mm.
and getting people comfortable with sharing their true beliefs and not just telling you what you want to hear can take a lot. And they need to feel like you care. They need to feel like there's no repercussions for sharing how they see things, etc. And so, in my mind, I think it's really about opening yourself up to that type of feedback by asking people. Number one, trying to understand what they're truly perceiving, because whatever you think they're perceiving is probably wrong. And then number two, being prepared to act on what you hear. It doesn't always mean that you can solve it. It doesn't always mean that you can fix it. It doesn't always mean that you should fix it or that their perception is right either. But it does. It also. I think it's very bold and courageous to ask, and being able to ask will open up your mind to a lot of different perspectives that you were blind to before.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, and that also shares how flexible you are in your mind to start to hear different perspectives and be okay with that, because that is sometimes difficult. It's like, no, but I am the leader. I am the guy that is supposed to decide the road and everything and the path. But when you start to open the eyes and be bold, as you're saying, things start to happen, and that's part of the belief system, and that's why even in this conversation it's very natural, but we can start to see like the belief system that is helping you to really accomplish the goal of leading a group of 100 people, more or less. So there is, when we were starting to talk about this, we were talking about the concept of balance between business and leadership. uh, and also something that is very important, and I believe I like from your perspective, is that you have a global view with the experience that you have in different countries. How you start to go deep in that area of this balance between this business and leadership, how you can balance, okay, I have to accomplish all these goals, but the leadership is going to this area right now. How I start to secure that we continue accomplishing the goals that we have, but at the same time we are leading in the right way.
Yeah. So in this, I mean, I would say it a little differently. I would say that um, any type of meaningful accomplishment requires us to balance many different things.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's not a question of, focusing on the business one day or focusing on leadership the next day. I think, or at different points in time, or even with different teams. I think those two things need to match up. And the best way that I've found to be constructive on that dimension is to really make everything about adding value to the mission or objective that the company has. And in this way, you can take out a lot of emotions, you can take out a lot of opinions, you can take out a lot of noise if you're willing and capable of focusing just on those things that are really adding value to the business. And it's not just about making money. Of course, this is obviously a huge driver for many of us and a huge enabler. But long term, it can be a mission for a nonprofit. It can be, whatever it can be. I think keep maintaining the focus on that and building a team that can understand that same mission or objective will make a lot of those questions just simply go away. So it's not about, do I focus on the business one day? Do I focus on leadership one day? Or where am I in that continuum? Those two things need to go together. My leadership style needs to enable the success of the business. If it doesn't, then we need to find someone else to do my job, right? And that's the same attitude I have for the people that work for me. Is we're going in this direction, and if you're adding value to that equation, then we love to have you on the team. If you're not adding value in that equation and it's detracting or you're not contributing, then we have to have a different set of we have to have a different discussion, as to whether or not this is a good fit. Because keeping that in mind is always, and just being, and I have a lot of growing to do in this, honestly, of just being very brutal with your focus on the objective. And the more complex the objective, the more difficult it is to find, this balance. There can be many, many, many things competing on that for achieving that. But in my mind, that's really where balance starts. So how you do it, I mean, I hope we'll get the chance to talk about one of my favorite sayings, which I often give to my kids and many other people who ask me, is they'll ask me a question that can be very simple, whatever it is. The answer is always, always, always that it depends. And it depends on what you want to achieve. It depends on how much, the resources you have. It depends on, the trick is knowing on what does it depend. And that's where I think people can distinguish themselves, because they understand that not all activities, not all objectives, not all businesses, or let's just keep it to objectives, are created equal. And you have to have you have to be critically thinking about, those key dependencies, those assumptions that will enable whatever it is you're trying to achieve. That can be anything from where you choose to go to dinner tonight to how many miles you run in your exercise routine, or how much R&D money you put behind a certain project in your company. I mean, it all depends on where you're going, what you want to achieve, how passionate you are, etc. Because I hear lots of the talk is cheap. There's lots of easy ways to state goals, but the reality is that there are very, very many. Anything worthwhile, it takes a lot of concerted effort to do, and so getting there takes a lot of skill and careful maneuvering.
And that's exactly where it starts to connect with the idea of, okay, it's not black or white. There is a lot of gray areas in the middle. When we want to really achieve something, it's not about like, okay, it's black because I want it this way, or white because everybody's going to the other way, but start to understand how to live with all the gray areas.
Yeah.
let me ask you something bold, like directly here. So remember a moment that you needed to be very courageous, and it can be in your personal life or in your business life. It could be, it's okay, either way. But okay, you had like even a lot of doubts of I'm going to do it or not. What is happening here? So you needed to be very courageous. And what happened when you took that leap?
Yeah. No, I don't think it's a terribly bold or it's not a difficult question. I have many examples I could give you, but thank you for it. Um, the other example I give to my team a lot are people that ask me for career advice, which I'm always happy to give. It's like most people love to give advice because we're usually not accountable for the result. But uh, but that's not why I give this advice. But that's just a joke. But the everyone likes to give advice. But anyway, I think for me, a critical time when this happened was, and I'll bring this back to the advice that I give to people when they ask, is I remember in my early days when I was early out of business school, I was you know I was a high achiever. I wanted to achieve great things. I wanted to get promoted. I wanted to manage teams. I wanted to be involved with a cool project, etc. Like many people are fresh out of business school, and I still am that way, by the way, but it's a little different now. Um, and there was a job available reporting to a manager that no one liked, doing a job that was boring and not so exciting, and no one wanted to take the job, even though it was reporting directly to our CFO, our business unit CFO at the time, and a really critical role. But there was a lot of baggage with the job. I mean, it was hard. There were late hours. It was involved in the monthly close, and there was a lot of downsides to it. But I took the job, and I excelled in it, and it ended up being a real turning point in my career because I discovered skills, I made connections, I was doing things that I previously didn't know that I was capable of doing or didn't know that I liked to do or could do. And it really opened a lot of other doors for me in my career because I was able to check a box on my resume, and I was able to relate better to the kind of the internal financial workings of a company. And it really changed the trajectory of my career. And it was something that, so you asked me like what was bold or courageous. It was doing something that I didn't know that I could do, number one.
Yeah.
Number two, it was, it was hard. I mean, it took more effort than just sitting back and doing the job that I was doing. But the reason that, I bring it back to the advice that I give to a lot of people who ask me for my perspective on career progression, it's one of the key things I tell people is it's a competitive advantage that we all have that we don't know, is that there are jobs and there are tasks that no one wants to do in the company.
Yeah.
And if you can take on those tasks or those jobs or those roles and do them well, people appreciate this, and because like me as a manager, as a leader now, I appreciate a lot the dirty work that goes on in our operations, and it happens at all levels and all teams that I have. There's a lot of, like, in English we'd say roll up your sleeves, get your hands dirty type of work.
Yeah.
That is not fun. It's, but it's absolutely critical and necessary to the company. And when we find people that can do these roles and do them well, they can be really valuable. So I think, that can be a real competitive advantage for all of us, is if finding opportunities and stuff that doesn't feel like it's sexy or cool or or exciting, you know. And and I think when you take those roles on, you can. It doesn't also doesn't mean you're stuck there forever, right? I mean, most people that are smart and capable, I promise you right now, if I find a smart and capable person, I can put them in my team leading nearly any process that I have, and they'll do great.
Yeah.
You know, um, but on the other hand, the opposite is also true. If there's someone that is not willing to, you know, think critically, doesn't have emotional intelligence, doesn't have, you know, the capabilities to work well in a team, they'll fail at whatever job they're in. You know, so I think matching those two things up, finding people that are critical or that are really good in critical roles, and giving them those opportunities to succeed, to either like jump. And I like to think, you know, that for me, I've taken many leaps in my career, and none of them were a sure thing, not one.
Mm, mm,
You know, I mean, and I think a lot of people believe that in order to that there's some magic career path fairy out there that's going to solve or map out a path for how a career should go. And in my experience, it just doesn't happen. I don't know a lot of people either that hasn't happened. Especially as you get more advanced, more senior in your role, um, there are many factors at play that that are uh, really critical to your success that you don't control, or also that you definitely can't plan for.
yeah.
You know, so I think being having the right mindset, displaying emotional intelligence, taking on the dirty work when it's necessary. Um, those are all critical skills that I learned very early in my career. Um, I also have some, you know, really emotional, you know, times in my career when I was, uh, you know, very worked through some really difficult business challenges, and those are the times when I learned the most. You know, um, and and they opened opportunities for me, uh, many opportunities.
And you are talking about, okay, the emotional intelligence, and that's something, and connecting that with everything that you are saying. Okay, there is not a safe work that you took, so that is important to understand, because it's exactly what you are saying. Like, okay, how you accomplish and you are a VP right now is okay. You were you were always capable of taking those works without feeling safe.
Yeah,
And that's also part of your belief system. It's like, okay, I am going to be bold right now, even when I don't know exactly what is going to happen. Moving to another country, moving to another position, changing roles in different areas. At the end, that's part of your belief system. It's like, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I know that I am going to find out. And
yeah,
that's part of the belief system also. So,
yeah,
in the area of emotional intelligence, I know that there has been several years of talking a lot about that. Maybe for somebody that is hearing about this right now, like, oh, yeah, it's easy when you are at this position, but when you are in the middle of the problem, how you can be have the emotional intelligence to calm down and start to take the decision to
yeah.
evolve with the decision that I take.
Yeah, for me, and this might be too simple. I'm not an expert on emotional intelligence, so I'm not. I, I have no idea if this is accurate or not. But for me, in my role, what and what I've observed and what I've tried to display in my career too is emotional intelligence is nothing more than being able to customize your approach to whatever situation you're in.
Mm,
So if you're like in this conversation you and I are having today, I know you told me to act like I'm just having a coffee with you, but of course it's different, right? I mean, I would share additional details and bloody like stories with you, if we weren't, if we didn't have an audience. But and so there's like, you have to customize your approach based on the audience that you want to uh, re, um,
I, to reach.
reach. Yeah, that you want to reach. And so when I make a presentation to a very senior leadership team, it's very different than when I make a presentation to, uh,
To
you
your
know,
team.
to my team or to an analytical level or whatever. Um, the tricky part, at least in my world of finance, accounting, controlling, um, other areas, is that you still have to let me say it different. The only way that you can do that well, I believe, is to know your stuff.
Yeah.
So if you can't fake it too long.
Yeah.
Okay. And so that's why. So, and then when you know your stuff, you know it very detailed, you know it high, low, side, left to right, you know it well, your area, whatever it is. Then it's very easy to tailor make that you can you can customize your message for a 2-minute discussion or 2-hour discussion or 2-day discussion. And it's just levels of depth and clarity. And for me, that's how I look at emotional intelligence, is being able to customize whatever your deliverable is for the audience that you're trying to reach or that you're being asked to approach. And people that can do this can really excel and do great things. And people that struggle with that, I'm sure we've all run into them, that you ask a simple question and 3 hours later you still don't have an answer to your simple question, because they've explained to you, every possible scenario when you were asking out of curiosity. So
No, I love what you're saying, and I agree. At the end, that's part of the emotional intelligence. You know who you are, and from that point, you can connect with anything. You know what you can do, and you have already all the knowledge, because you can have all the knowledge of everything, but if you don't know who you are, it's not possible to start to think about different perspectives depending on the audience. So I love that comment. Mark, it's incredible, but we're at the end of the show. It's so quick. So, in regards of uh, like a final recommendation, or if anybody that was hearing this and yeah, the gray zones and understanding that it's a balance, and this is an art, what would you say, like maybe like the last comment, like okay, have this as a reminder for yourself, maybe a type of reminder that you do to yourself every day, of saying okay, everything is going to be well. I don't know what is yours, to
yeah,
understand.
I don't know that I have anything that is so succinct. I once had a leadership coach tell me that I'm very complicated. So I guess this is a good thing in some circles, but when you ask me for a final wrap up, I don't know that it's so useful. But just in general, I would say, I mean, don't be afraid of the gray areas. The world is not so black and white. Um, uh, People in positions of very high positions also, they struggle with very similar issues that everyone does. It's not unique to us in our position or in our set of circumstances. It's really, um, it happens to everyone. Yeah. So be comfortable in that gray. Don't worry so much about solving it right away, but put in an honest effort every day. And you know, as we say as they say in Spanish, we poco a poco. You know, just keep going, and little by little, you'll get there.
Awesome. Mark, really, it was a pleasure to have you here with us today. Thank you for sharing your knowledge, your wisdom, and all the your career. I know that there is a lot of things that we can be talking about, and maybe we can do it in the future. But it was really a pleasure for me, and I believe for the audience too. So thank you for this conversation.
Thanks,
Uh,
Alejandro. Glad to be here, and thank you for having me. All the best with the program.
Yeah, thank you. So, everyone, this show can also be heard on Spanglish Radio Network. Please check out spanglishworld.ca for all the news and programming. Spanglish and Spanglish World, watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and leave it. Thank you, Mara. Thank you all. See you.